The members of Alcoholics Anonymous continue to claim that they are not religious-based. But I have clear-cut evidence over and over that says they certainly are. And stay tuned and I'll tell you why. If one was to accuse a longtime member of Alcoholics Anonymous of belonging to a cult, he would have an adamant rebuttal. We're just alcoholics helping other alcoholics. No, they are not. They use fear tactics on members who dissent as well as coercion for freedom of thought, and more so if the member states he's leaving the rooms. They all have the exact characteristics of a fundamentalist church, which I also consider a cult, as the hierarchy brainwashes its members to believe that there was a worldwide flood which only Noah and his family survived on a constructed ark, and the world is only 4,000 to 6,000 years old. It is the same repeat rent cycle with AA as well. And with all these cult tactics, not only can they not even claim a success rate, but have had a dismal majority failure rate on its members maintaining long-term sobriety. But I will declare that Alcoholics Anonymous is not only a cult, but they are a religious cult. There is a reason that atheists, agnostics, and even quiet Christians tend not to feel comfortable in AA and the 12 steps. Because they were based on religion, and specifically, that religion was Christianity. Now, the participants of the rooms will deny this, but it is true. Every aspect of AA was based on Christianity, and the tenets of Christianity are propagated in their mantras, steps, and philosophy. It was based on experiences from Bill Wilson during his own withdrawal from alcohol. And later, I will reveal something that may shock you on what influenced his spiritual awakening. When Bill Wilson ended his own friendship with John Barleycorn, he didn't construct a method for sobriety that was based on rational thinking, reasonability, or any sort of science-backed intervention. Now, in fairness, this was in the 1930s and medicine and science were much more archaic than today. We had no way of studying the effects of neuroplasticity on the brain or anything of the like. Dr. Bob, who was Bill's sobriety colleague, he wasn't a stupid man. He was just living in a time of much more ignorance than today. It would be a fair statement to say that they didn't have the proper tools to construct a science-based method for treatment. And it would also be fair to state, as the decades passed, AA should have modified its philosophy as we learned more, especially since they have maintained this massive failure rate in which I speak. To say Bill Wilson was influenced by the Oxford group would be a vast understatement. He wasn't influenced, he was completely programmed by them. The Oxford group was led by Frank Buchman, a turned evangelist for the non-denominational organization, but hardcore Christian focused nevertheless. I didn't know this until recently, but the more I read about Mr. Wilson, the more he resembled a cult leader in his time. I first heard this on an episode by Sobriety Bestie. I fact-checked her claims with multiple sources, and her claims are absolutely correct. Wilson literally took the platform of Oxford and created the philosophy of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps directly from their Christian-based tenets. You can see this in the opening prayer of an AA meeting. The members in the rooms would claim it's multi-purpose, it meets any worldview of anyone sitting in the circle, but the fact is, it origins as a remembrance from my old days of my very strict Catholic upbringing. They are asking for God's intervention for clarity. Telling me that a higher power can be anyone's version doesn't make it less religious. You are starting the premise of a recovery program with magic from the magic elf in the sky. Understand, I'm not saying it's awful to be religious. Believe me, during the initial inferno of my own 5-day detox in the second phase to day 45, I asked the magic elf not to solve my problems, but for the strength to solve them myself. And I have no idea if that elf answered or not. I know I made it through, and if I made the case that it was due to the elf's magic wand, it would be completely unprovable. And I certainly wouldn't create a treatment program based on an invisible spell that largely would only reside in my personal gray matter. But that is exactly what Wilson did. He based his philosophy of AA on the Oxford group as well as the 12 steps. It isn't based on solving one's problems, it is founded on God's intervention. And that God is based on the Christian philosophy he was programmed with at the Oxford group. If he wanted to create a religious group, then he certainly was free to do that. But the claims from his members are he didn't do that. the AA proponents claim it isn't religious-based, then use a philosophy that has nothing but religious-based Christianity. As stated, the 12 steps were also taken directly from the group in which Wilson was indoctrinated with as well. The members need to think about this before they rebuttal back. Many steps are about turning your life over to God. It's not about reconstructing your life. It's not about investigating the root cause of why you drank and possibly locating a counselor to figure this out and solving that past trauma, which is what a lot of alcoholics had. It's not about improving your life, advancing your being more successful than you are today. It is to admit you are powerless, you are deficit, and turn it all over to God. It isn't just a side note, AA. This is your premise. You're asking an invisible being that you can't even prove exists to remove your deficits. I believe in a magic elf as well, and I think if I asked the elf to fix me, it would refer me back to my own volition. When you rely on God to solve everything, you immediately set yourself up for failure. It reminds me of a friend who once invested $250,000 on a bunch of speculative stocks, knowing his evangelistic God would see him through. He lost every penny. God is not going to pick you up and carry you. Those single set of footprints you see in the sand, they're your own. But yet AA propagates this Christian philosophy, then has the gall to inform me that they aren't religious-based at all. If you look up one of the C's of the Oxford Group's tenets, you will see they promote confessing your sins to another Christian, whether it be the sin itself or temptation of such. Does that sound familiar? It's one of the steps of 12 as well. Completely Christian-based. Almost half the 12 steps are solely and directly involved with Christian tenets or God himself. But the members keep trying to defend that they aren't founded by religion. It could be argued that the reason for such a dismal record of success from the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous is directly correlated to their Christian-based philosophy. This is funny because a great many Christians reject AA philosophy as well. The reason many ordinary Christians reject Bill Wilson's founding principles is the same reason many ordinary Christians reject Christian fundamentalist church tenets. Because the ordinary Christian recognizes a cult just like I do, and just like the other many escapees from that very cult. I have an article where I equate AA to a Christian fundamentalist church. The reason AA will not modify its program is the same reason the fundamentalist Christian will not come to reason and realize that the world is not 4,000 to 6,000 years old. It doesn't matter how much science from all genres is presented to this type of cult member. The fundamentalist replies that they have their own scientists who differ in opinion. In a channel I have on the subject, I clearly show the gigantic errors the methodology in which these creationist scientists are guilty of committing. The fundamentalist will reply that mainstream scientists are against Christianity. I point out that many of these mainstream scientists are actually Christian. They state those scientists aren't real Christians. They won't change your beliefs or come to reason because they don't belong to a church, they belong to a cult. This is exactly how AA worldview operates. They could have and should have transformed their philosophy and methods years ago. They should have figured out that the program generally wasn't working after the first decade of it not doing so. But look at the parallels with my above example of the exact same cult traits with the Christian fundamentalist church. You tell them the program doesn't work, and they give a bunch of reasons why the majority fail, all based on the fault of that very majority. Some will point to one flawed study that was very biased to AA that shows it does work for most, when every other review of their program states it not only doesn't, but massively so. You tell them you left the program and never used AA method, yet remained sober for years or decades later, they reply you're either a dry drunk or never were a real alcoholic. The two examples above are identical, each being a cult of a different genre with the same cult tactics. Bill Wilson went to Christian zealots, became a fanatic himself, and the surprise I didn't know until recently was that he was on hallucinogenic drugs when he came to his spiritual awakening. This is something you would expect in a cult leader like the many that emerged in the 1970s. None of his recovery method was based on any sort of evidence. It was opinion coming from the religious fanaticism of the Oxford Group. But yet all of us anti-Alcoholics Anonymous creators get an avalanche of rebuttals from those longtime members of the rooms. They continue to trust the AA method and continue to trust it as the best way to gain long-term sobriety. But with this background that is revealed about Bill Wilson himself and the origin of AA, I can only scratch my head and ask, why would you? Now, if you found this content helpful, go ahead and follow along and subscribe. And to check out my condensed work on how to reinvent every aspect of your being, check out Reinvention of Self, How to Change Your Life and Being Forever. Link is on the description, usually free on KDP. And remember, keep your contract. Be sober at sundown, and I'll see you at the next sunrise.